always said, transparency is the enemy of corruption. The person's now in charge of the case, and you start all over again. And we give repeat information to them. So we've given this to you. Take a place like Ditchibotlo. Clover had to pull out. They just couldn't operate with no water running and electricity, and that town's economy starts collapsing as a result of that mismanagement. And we can't allow this immigration to happen. And that's sadly what is happening, because it's becoming too expensive to live here, your property rates and everything else, for the value that you get back. And so what you're having, Mark, is that you're going to see head offices, as you say, moving to other cities. You're going to see stranded assets, warehouses emptying out, malls emptying out, office blocks emptying out.
Join us in supporting the Springboks when they take on the All Blacks at Ellis Park on the 31st of August 2024. We will be hosting exclusive hospitality at the Ellis Park Arena. Our hospitality includes pre-match analysis by international rugby players, lunch, drinks, Category A tickets inside the stadium so that you can enjoy the game right there. After the match, we're going to have live music, more food, more drinks, exclusive parking. What more could you want? If you want to join us and bring any size group, get more information below this video. Welcome to the State of the Nation, where we're going to try and sell you car rental through Pace Car Rental. Wayne, you used to be a car rental man. These guys are part of our sponsors.
I know Justin well.
Yeah, so, Pace Car Rental, to everybody that's watching this, if you need a car rented, go to the Pace Car Rental website and use the code SONA, S-O-N-A, and you can get a discount. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, you better do it quickly, or else we're going to come after you. So just take that as a warning. Right. In many of our episodes of the State of the Nation, we've spoken about the situation in what was once the business hub of Africa, Johannesburg, Gauteng. This was meant to be the biggest business city in Africa. Possibly still holds that by some measures. But my Lord, the decay has been palpable within Johannesburg and in Greater Gauteng. And nobody knows this better than another long-suffering resident, and that is Wayne Duvenage from Outa. Wayne, welcome back to the State of the Nation.
Nice to be with you again, Mike.
We haven't spoken for a while, and a lot has happened since we were last year. At that point, we were talking about the forthcoming elections. They've now come and gone. Really, first, before we get into the situation with Johannesburg and Gauteng, the elections have been dealt with. It's dominated our lives. Everything in the newspaper has been around election first, then election results, then governments of national unity, then parliament, cabinet seats, then the impeachment or not of John Klope, and all sorts of stuff that we haven't really got down to business, but you can't hold this off forever. What is your making from, you're a person that watches these things closely. What do you make of our government of national unity? Do you think this has been a good outcome?
Yeah, I think so. It was the best of all the outcomes that were out there. I think there should have been some more economic lever-pulling portfolios gone to the opposition. And we've always said, transparency is the enemy of corruption. And when you start to do this type of stuff, and that's going to come from a government of national unity. So there are going to be good things. There's going to be more of that. And let's make the best of it and keep this car on this very bumpy road. It's not going to be plain sailing, but we've got to keep it going.
I suppose, even that announcement of the 300 million rand that's been siphoned out of public works over the last 10 years, cybercrime, but people who actually work in there have actually been arrested.
Yeah.
So it looks like, cybercrime, we all think of somebody sitting in a former Soviet Union country that's tapping away with a hoodie on. But in actual fact, this looks like something a lot less...
less externally driven, but a combination of external and internal.
Yeah, sort of he has a password. Welcome to our bank account kind of thing. So it's going to be very interesting to monitor. And obviously... what it might be looking like is that some of the portfolios that have been handed to opposition parties are those where the ANC had lost total control.
Yeah, and again, there's a few of them, and let's see how those ministers manage those portfolios. But then, this example is one where we've said, now, this has probably happened, and maybe not the same modus operandi, but there's this type of wide-scale corruption happening in many departments, we believe. Many departments, because we see it. In the Department of Transport, we've got a new minister, Barbara Creasy, still ANC, protecting the party line, we imagine. But we've written to her and hoping that she will meet, because the one constant over the last decade or so on the work we do is we've been watching what's going on. There's been 8 ministers of transport. And each one, we've met with a number of them, but just keeps fobbing off the issues that we are raising. There are a number of things that are happening in the Department of Transport where we believe these empire-building entities and the Road Traffic Infringement Agency, Road Traffic Management Corporation, the driver's license issues, just goes on and on and on, and nobody's dealing with these challenges that we've raised. So we hope there's going to be more of this, and we call on all ministers, hey, why don't you go and do independent forensic audits? Let them loose in your systems and find the corruption and then tell it as it is to the public. Now, the ANC is not going to do that easily because they've been controlling these departments for years. So you see what happens when somebody else, an opposition party, goes in and does it differently. And sadly, that's not going to happen in Gauteng because of the dynamics that have unfolded here.
Yeah, now let's delve into some of those dynamics here. Government of national unity. There's obviously, one would imagine, a portion of this is just mathematics. You come into it with a certain number of votes, therefore you should be entitled to a certain number of seats. We understand that the biggest party generally gets the leader. The way these things are negotiated internationally, second biggest will get the deputy leader, hence the discussion a few weeks back about potentially John Steenhuisen becoming deputy president, but that was never going to happen.
Yeah.
But we're just sort of setting the scene. That's what would generally happen in coalitions.
Yeah, look, I mean, we expected a little bit more power sharing at national. So that didn't happen, and let's move on. They're in the cabinet, and I think we're going to see some things happening. And then we expected that to flow into the provinces. That's always the thinking. At national, we're going to do these arrangements and get to come to agreements. And at provincial level, and that's why there was this hold-off, there was a standoff. But in KZN, they went ahead and they did it professionally, and they shared power to the extent that everybody was happy. And in Gauteng, you'd expect a 35% party, ANC, slightly bigger than the DA, to share a lot of that power with the DA and with a couple of others. And that wasn't happening. So I think the DA were right to walk away. So we're not going to be given nothing or these tidbits and then kept out of dealing with the economy of this province. So they are in opposition. Now where does that leave the ANC? Well, they're in total control again. That's where they were. And we've seen a lot of wrongdoing in Gauteng, quite frankly. You just have to look at what happened when Babita Deokaran was murdered. There's been no accountability in the health department, nothing. The social welfare department and the chaos that's ensuing there. People are dying, child trafficking, all these entities that are set up there, these NGOs that do good work for society, for the underprivileged, for people who cannot defend themselves, who are supported, it's supposed to be done by government, but NGOs do a lot of that work, supported partially by government. They've taken away most of that funding to set up stupid
militias.
And so-called peace forces and police entities. It's crazy, man. So this province is being badly run under Panyaza Lesufi, quite frankly. And if you did independent forensic audits in those departments, independent, when I mean, and get civil society involved, you will see the extent of the corruption and the maladministration and mismanagement and wasteful expenditure. It's excessive.
Yeah, because just to keep the people that are watching or listening to this particular show in the loop, what we're talking about is some, and this isn't every scandal, but there's been some major things that we've had to watch happen. We saw in the middle of the hard COVID lockdown, when nobody was allowed to leave their homes, that the Gauteng government education department sanctioned the spending of over 400 million rand on the fogging of schools to kill the COVID virus for people that wouldn't be there anyway.
Yeah.
And I presume that if they gave that sort of tender to you and I to set up a company to go and fog, we would have, and said be really excessive, you would battle to get into 7 figures, never mind over 400 million. So there's obviously a big scandal there.
Of course there is. There are companies, connected people within companies that got those tenders, overpriced, fogging where they shouldn't have, sanitizing when there was no sanitizing. And by the way, long after kids had gone back and that the sanitizing continued. I wouldn't be surprised today if there's still some sanitizing contract that's still in place in some places. So, there was a lot of waste there.
And then, of course, there was the famous Tembisa Hospital scandal. And there was a case of almost flat-out theft, wasn't it, of people literally just ordering, making these fake orders and pocketing the cash. And it did cost one of the employees of the government their lives as they try to blow the whistle on this.
Yeah, Babita Deokaran unfortunately assassinated. They caught the assassins, and it's not difficult to join the dots here. The journalists, Wicks from News 24, did more work than the department themselves. I mean, if you and I are the head of the department, you uncover that type of corruption. You go in deep, you find the perpetrators, you find everyone involved, and you have them suspended and held accountable, jailed or lay charges, and let the criminal justice system follow. That didn't happen. No one was held accountable by the department themselves. They just say, well, it's in the SIU's hands. Well, it can be in the SIU's hands. Let them carry on with their stuff, but you do your work. You are the custodian of the accountability transactions that must take place. The hearings, the dismissals, and the laying of the affidavits with the police. And even some of those people have them declared as delinquent directors. We see this often, but nothing happens. Why? I'll tell you why, because there are people higher up the chain that are connected. So it just opens up a can of worms. Everybody just puts the lid on it and hopes it goes away. And it's headlines today, it's gone tomorrow. We forget about it. We should never.
But now, just explain to people, where does an organization like yours, Outa, which is a body an organization set out there to uncover tax abuse, and you guys have been wonderfully successful. But when can you step in?
Well, we unfortunately can't lay charges, and bring people to court. We can do civil cases like we did against Duvenage and have her declared delinquent. We set a lot of precedent there, and we urge a lot of state entities to go after, do what we did there. They're costly and they're time-consuming. But you see, people inside the system have the records, as you can see what Dean McPherson's doing now. They see the mails, they see, they can get the transactions, the procurement contracts, they can put the pieces together. That's difficult for us unless we get whistleblowers giving us information. So we work largely with whistleblowers.
Why can't you lay charges?
Well, we can lay the charges, but it's a criminal justice system. So you either the NPA does the formal charge, unless they have a nollie prosecute certificate, which they'll never give on a case that's very slam dunk. So we are not the criminal justice system. We can help. We can compile affidavits with clear evidence, and we've done that on many cases with ministers involved, with the previous deputy president, David Mabuza. We filed a very compelling case against him on the back of the stuff that we got out of a civil matter that's running with Fred Daniels on the Mpumalanga matter. So we can only give all the evidence, but it's up to the prosecution office now to take that, to then subpoena bank records. We can get copies of, we can get hard evidence that says, now you go and get the real evidence that stands up in court. We've done all of this work. They can subpoena, we can't. And it's for them to bring the charges and bring those people to court. We can't do that.
And Wayne, has there been any greater willingness on behalf of the prosecuting authorities and the NPA to actually do this?
It's been extremely slow and very frustrating, very frustrating. Now, for the first few years after Ramaphosa came into power, we were very patient and saying, look, change is coming. And Shamila Batoy having to deal with an incapacitated department, a lot of people still in the system putting up barriers that were working for Zuma and others, and really just slowing those processes down. So we had some feeling towards that. But here we are, 6 years, 5 years later, and not enough is done, and a couple of botched cases. And for us, the glaring, obvious ones that came out of the Zondo Commission, the evidence is there. It's far too little has been done in that regard. So we're at our wits' end, and we've got to find other ways to light the fire in the NPA's kitchen now. There's a lot of independent and capacity building in the investigating directorate that needs to still take place, independence on their part. That's taken the government far too long. So the president is slow there. The SIU doing good work. So we work with the SIU, we work with the NPA, we give them a lot of our evidence with the senior investigators. But sometimes we have to give that evidence 3, 4, 5 times because a new person comes along and this person's now in charge of the case, and you start all over again. And we give repeat information to them. So we've given this to you. And so we see a little bit of a disconnect sometimes between SARS, who's got oversight powers, Treasury, COGTA, and the NPA. If these entities just worked a lot closer together, I think we could bring down these corruption networks a lot faster. But they don't.
Do you think they don't or they won't?
I'm not sure that the NPA won't. I think they are independent enough. I just think they get slowed right down. It's sad to see that there potentially could be political interference because, on a number of these matters, you don't need 15 items of evidence. You need 1 or 2 solid cases to have a number of these people brought to book and in jail. Now, there are a few, Mapisa Mgakula and others, but they're taking a long time. Ace Magashula's case is there. We now see the recent one with the previous minister, what's his name, Zodwa? Zizi Kodwa. Yes, now his case is in court. Sadly, the ethics issue of that is swept aside, and he's now an MP as well. If he's found guilty, he can't be an MP. Until then, he will be. But those are few and far between, especially what we've seen happening and the evidence that we've given to the criminal justice system.
Yeah. So now, if one looks at to take it back to the situation in Gauteng,
yeah,
one would imagine that if you and I mean you alluded to this earlier, if you control the whole building, not just the keys to the office, but the keys to the building, the lift, the whole mechanism, the filing cabinets, the email servers. You can bury a lot of stuff. You can ensure that a lot of stuff doesn't come to light. Yeah. Now, it feels like this may be happening in real time in Gauteng.
Yeah. We think so. We think so, as we've said, apply independence to forensic investigations, and we will be able to uncover what happened in the health sector. We'll be able to uncover a lot of stuff that's happening, and even at the city level, we see it rife in the MEC's departments for Joburg Properties Company, for instance, Joburg's roads agency. Many of these departments. So both at provincial and local government level in Gauteng and Joburg, there's a lot of gatekeeping, and we see people move. So if you look at the last board of the Joburg Property Company, it just moved away. They were dealing with and having to do disciplinary hearing against Helen Burtis. They had a lot of evidence of wrongdoing, but they're following due process. And before they could get there, all the changes happening, DA out, quickly get rid of the board, new boards come in, start again, put your pliable people into those boards. And it's just crazy what's been happening.
Yeah. Because obviously now, here we find ourselves in Johannesburg, where the places, ladies and gentlemen, the roads are exploding. The buildings are catching alight. There is not a role that isn't full of potholes, and we don't have load shedding, but only about half of the traffic lights work. I was driving around parts of the city today. There aren't road markings any longer; they've worn off. And this is now the financial jewel of Africa, set up like that. We over 100 years of that. It should be the richest city in Africa. So we are sitting here with this massive problem within the city, and yet the city has had to, in an act of real desperation, try and levy 200 rand on the poorest of the poor, 200 rand a month on the poorest of the poor as an electricity surcharge. Have I got that correct?
Yeah, on the prepaid meter customers, yeah. 230 rand with 230.
These are not people, the rich end of the market. This is the poor end of the market. That has been rebuffed badly by citizens, as you would expect, because there's been no consultation.
Yeah. So I think, look, Mike, what we have now evidence of is, yes, Joburg is decaying. We have a broke city. And it's badly managed. It's as simple as that. It's not being managed proactively. Somebody remarked to me years ago that if we're not careful, Joburg's suburbs will have dirt roads in time to come. And that's not wrong, not far wrong. There's 14,000 kilometers of roads in Gauteng. 14,000. They've got a budget to resurface 100 kilometers a year. So just on a hiding to nothing. There are a number of bridges, a high percentage of bridges that some of the engineers don't even want to drive over. They're that unsafe. There's a report on this. It's gone as far as the presidency because the city doesn't have the money. But our view must be, you do have the funds. You're just misappropriating, misspending, mismanaging the city. So to a large extent. So what we need, the stormwater drainage system, which gives rise to those explosions, if you don't have those cleaned out, and if you don't stop the sewage from flowing into stormwater drainage where methane builds up and one spark creates the explosions that you have, there's going to be more of that. And the buildings catching alight and people dying, and no one is held accountable. Nobody. So we need new management. We need to sort the city out. And there's less than 30 months to the next local elections. And I think between now and then, what you're seeing now is citizens are getting angry. And they are saying to the city, you better reverse this 230 rand charge. And the city's now having to realize that they've got no choice but to do so and rethink it and engage meaningfully and start planning. And our view is this. There is more than enough money, and all the city does is it takes all these increases, these CPI increases from all their contractors and just passes it on. What they're not doing is a zero-based budgeting approach. We're saying go and look at everything. Look at the value you're getting from all your contracts. And we can guarantee them that if they went and did a zero-based budget on headcounts, on how many people are even at work, on all the value that they get from their various service providers, they would be able to bring down the cost of the management of this city by 20%, at least, because you can't just continuously accept these increases. You've got to look at value, go and get more quotes. And so now what they've got, all these different companies, 11 different companies, from Pick It Up to City Power to water and property companies and IT companies. And they've all got boards. This doesn't happen in a city like Cape Town. It's run very differently. Now, there's some merit in that process, but there's a lot of the merit that they sought to seek to keep the politicians out of their grubby hands out of those tills hasn't worked. So we need to go back and rethink, how do we run a city like Johannesburg? And if we are smart about this, if this city's management worked with civil society, worked with its citizens and its ratepayer associations, we could make magic here. This city should be pristine. All sectors of society, right down into the poorest sectors of society, we should be working together to have a real world-class African city, not a poor, degraded African city. That's what it is. It's a mess, quite frankly, and it all sits with the politicians who are interfering with the administration, and a lack of transparency and a lack of good governance. So, we've got to shake this tree hard as civil society.
And nothing proves it more than the fact that we've got a glorious civic centre on the hill, a massive building, which is totally empty because there was some structural problem.
Well, it's not a big thing to fix, by the way. There's a slab that needs to be fixed and some fireproofing in one of the sections. It's the very quick job. If this was the head office of a corporate entity, it would have been done and dusted in a few weeks, maybe a month or two. But so you've got all these people working from home and out of temporary offices and all spread out around the city. It's disjointed. It takes longer now to deal with queries, to deal with housing plans, approvals. It's become an absolute mess, and we have to challenge this. We have to fix it. We have to get that city management back into work.
Yeah. And, actions have consequences. We saw last year Amazon come to South Africa. Obviously a big multinational hoping to break into the South African market, but then get headquartered in Cape Town.
Yeah.
Now, I love everybody that lives in Cape Town, and we're all very jealous in the mountain and all that. We get it. But this is, as somebody put it years ago to me, Johannesburg is where the gorilla sleeps. By being in this area, you have access to about 3/4 of the population within striking distance.
Well, not only that, this is the economic hub still of South Africa, and we can't allow this immigration to happen. And that's sadly what is happening, because it's becoming too expensive to live here, your property rates and everything else for the value that you get back. And so what you're having, Mark, is that you're going to see head offices, as you say, moving to other cities. You're going to see stranded assets, warehouses emptying out, malls emptying out, office blocks emptying out. And we shouldn't let that happen. We must fight to make this city great, to make it the pristine and the vibrant economic hub that it should be and was and can be. And I'm not going back 20 years ago. It was vibrant. It was a lovely place to be. It's safe to live and work here, and that's not the case. So we've got to work collectively together, and this is where this co-governance thinking of, we can't force ourselves into government, but if we don't do something differently, and, if they don't want to open the door and let civil society in to help them, then we have to kick that door down. And there are many ways to do that, and we can hold government to account, take legal action, go and do the repairs, get the cost orders through courts that they pay, attach the mayor's car if we have to, and his computers and his office furniture. It takes a hard-assed approach, and that's unfortunately they leave us no option but to start looking at those opportunities. And that's what we're discussing with various groups and civil society organizations. So how do we help and deal with the city in a different way? Because the management teams are not opening their doors. We met with City Powers, 2 officials, and said, we will help you oversee and stop the vandalism that's taking place at all these substations. Every resident association has fast reaction security groups. We can put cameras from homes onto all those substations. We're going to have armed response there within a few minutes. We've got an app that they don't want to integrate with their system that reports all of these things. We can report vandalism. All done free for the city, by the way, and they just refuse to have this opened up to them. And that way we can help them at our cost, the citizens' cost, to keep the vandals away from all these substations. Do you think they would accept that? I would have thought these guys would have jumped at it and said, let's start, and we can get this process flowing. They're not interested. It's a case of what's in it for us. What do you mean, what's in it for you? What's in it for the city is that there's less loss, less costs in the vandalism. And we can start reporting illegal connections. We can show them the geolocations all through apps and integrated engagements. They're just not interested. Instead of dealing with the 30% of electricity theft, they push our rates and taxes up. So this is a city management that is fast asleep, that has got no regard for their citizens and residents. No regard, quite frankly, because if they did have that regard, they'd rule and run the city with the citizens where they come first in all their decisions they make. And I'm afraid, we get the governments that we vote for, and hopefully things will change in 30 months' time, and hopefully we've got more active citizens standing for election in these wards. And I think if we put a plan together, citizens can run the city in 30 months' time. We can take over the running of the city. But that's going to take a concerted effort with funding to put together a team and a strategy. Now, it's very close to going into politics, and you've got to be very careful. Civil society and politics, you stay out of it because you've got to hold politicians to account. But when the politicians fail us and city management, there are other ways to get into city management through the political process. And I think that's what we've got to explore.
Now, Wayne, we did discuss the last time about tax boycotts. You explained that it's not as easy as it is. It's not as easy to do as it is to say. But that sort of civic action was very much a version of that happened in eThekwini, didn't it, in Durban?
Well, they tried, and it failed because they didn't do it properly. And in Bloemfontein, they got it right in a case where the city wasn't providing services such as waste removal and management, and they got a court order, and they can do their own waste management. And that's happening, by the way, in Tshwane, closer to home. And here's another avenue. In the Municipal Systems Act, we are discovering new ways to deal with this accountability. So if, for instance, we can bring a case that says the city, you need to re-evaluate the value you're getting from your service provider. Let's say take Pick It Up. If we can prove that the value we're getting from that service providing at, 250 Rand or 300 Rand per refuse removal per home, is it could be done at 100 Rand per vehicle or per bin per home, then we might be able to use the courts to force them to renegotiate that entire contract. And if not, we have the right. So we could set up civil society waste removal processes and within various, start by different wards and different areas, and take over. That's how you start taking over the running of the city. And then Pick It Up has to rethink its model because it's doing half the work, because citizens are doing that work. And I can tell you there's money in waste. You can get that right. You can run a waste removal organization at half the price to citizens and make money out of that waste. City doesn't do that. This city here is far from its recycling mandate where it should be.
Yeah. Now, Wayne, you did, if I recall the last time when we did touch on this issue, and, you know, for anybody that wants to watch it in more detail, to go back to that interview, where we did talk about civic action, basically tax boycotts. You did explain that it was quite hard to do on a national level, but a little bit easier to do on a local level, isn't it?
Yeah. Much easier. And the smaller the town, the easier. A big city like Joburg is more difficult, but you can do it. And there are ways. You just want to do it in a way that it's legal. In other words, the courts endorse what you're doing. So that's when you get the trust accounts set up. And so in small towns where the collapse of the municipality has happened, courts have ordered civil society organizations to take over the trust accounts, manage them, but the intention is always to try and hand it back. And that's where the disaster, so they keep failing. And we need to put longer term plans in place. Another example of this is wastewater treatment plants. Municipalities just don't know how to do it. You see the raw sewage now flowing from Makgali City into the Crocodile River, ruining all the tourism sectors downstream, farming, and it's just crazy. So you shouldn't have that. So I think what's going to have to happen, and the past Minister of Water and Sanitation, Chunu, was on track, and I hope the new minister takes that on. We're working with civil society. We should be able to set up ventures that are not owned by the municipality anymore, but owned by business, civil society, and the municipality. All the sewage fees that are charged diverted to those entities so we can manage the upgrading and maintenance of wastewater treatment plants. There are hundreds of them, thousands around the country. Now, if we did that and took the control away from the inept and incompetent municipalities, we could have continuity and good management of those with good oversight. So if you can do it with wastewater treatment plants, you can do it with waste management, you can do it with substation management, electricity management. And so there are many ways to start driving or forcing a co-governance approach. But that, for civil society to do that, it requires a team that has to be not volunteers. They have to be paid, they have to be professionals, they have to be funded. And that's where we have to work with business, with international donors to say, you know, if government doesn't want to listen and engage and participate, then we have to do it another way. But always getting the endorsement of the courts. When the court gives you the order to attach the mayor's car because you have followed due process to fix that pothole, to fix that bridge, which they should have done with our tax money and they didn't, then you get the court order to go and collect the money from the city. And if they don't, now that's all takes money to do all of this work. If they don't, then you get a court order to attach. And that's beautiful. That's happened in Harrismith and a number of towns, where in those locations, the civil society is running large parts of those towns. And that's what we've got to do in these big cities that are failing us.
Yeah, and that's had real political implications if one looks at the last elections.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's your old hometown, which definitely got new management in the last election. Wayne, just to circle back to the Gauteng government, because obviously this is an issue that's hot at the moment. And the reason that I've got taken this up is just purely because one can see how this is going to play out.
Yeah.
This is not going to be difficult to work out. You've got a minority government with skeletons that they've run out of closet space. So it's a matter of time before these issues actually spill out. Those skeletons come out.
Yeah.
And, perhaps the Premier will not have the coverage that he's enjoyed for the last 30 years, him and his predecessors.
Yeah.
It's gonna have real implications, and it could be quite nasty.
It should end up in jail time for a lot of people, quite frankly. Again, lifestyle audits, forensic audits, get the information, get the rule of law to flow, quick, fast, because justice delayed is denied, and let's just go and round up people who are grossly misusing and corruptly using our finances. Because if we did that, there is more than enough money. I often hear people saying, "Oh, but we got to fix the municipal finance model because it's not quite working." Well, we can show you similar-sized towns, medium-sized towns, small, large cities, with similar economic environments, similar parts of the country, some very successful in the taxes that they collect, very successful, and others just collapsed. And they've both got the same potential. So you take a place like Ditchibotlo, Clover had to pull out. They just couldn't operate with no water running and electricity, and that town's economy starts collapsing as a result of that mismanagement. So it's all around management and holding people to account. And there's a correlation between politics and the collapsed cities and towns. And the ANC keeps putting its head in the sand to that. It doesn't want to acknowledge that. But you just go and do a correlation graph on DA-run cities and the Auditor General's report. It's so basically obvious. And I'm not punting the DA. I have goes at them as well for a number of issues as well. But it does come down to, is there political will or not? And when corruption is run for too long and senior people are implicated, there is no political will to expose this stuff. So the lid will be kept on all of these matters. And it's just so sad to see. So the political will changes in the GNU and the national level. We're seeing it unfolding now. And it's not going to change here. It's going to change possibly in KZN, where they've got new management. And but it's not going to change in Gauteng and Joburg for a long time until we change the leadership. And when we get that right, it's going to be a fun day for us.
Yeah, one has to sort of wonder if we've gone mad. You are sitting in the financial capital, and by a non-functioning Johannesburg, the amount of money it's costing, an opportunity it's costing South Africa.
Yeah.
Because the country is still set up as if Johannesburg works, but it doesn't.
Yeah, sadly, and that's what's causing this whole economic shift to other parts of the country, and with a lot of work that can be done now online and with AI and that. It's not going to take long for big companies with head offices here to relocate. And you can't reverse that. When that happens, you can't fix the city in 10 years' time and say, okay, now bring your head office back. It's not going to happen. So we need to stop the rot now. And we need to work with big business to put in place these plans to force that issue. And there's a lot of good civil society organizations in Gauteng and in Joburg that are doing a lot of good work, but we need to bring all of this together, and we need to put forward a concerted strategy that's going to get the government to wake up, local government. And you know, what they've got to do is invite us in, but if they don't, then we'll invite them to engage with us. And if they still don't, then that's when we have to be hard-asked about it. I mean, I've said to Panyaza Lesufi, we need to talk about a number of things. I mean, the decisions they've made on the ETOL matter to allow this province to have to fork out 4 billion rand for past maintenance on a SANRAL national road. It's not a provincial road. It's crazy. And to have to pay 30% of the debt that SANRAL got this province into, not Gauteng. Gauteng government didn't get into that debt. But these guys just capitulate. And then they get most of their money from national. So it's like just moving the deck chairs on the Titanic.
But it's the residents that suffer, because that money should be coming to the running of the province.
Exactly. And then it takes a year and a half to 2 years to fix a bridge that's washed away on the Beyers Nadir. Beyers Nadir Road, that extension that's been under construction for a year and a half. The weeds are growing through the sand piles that have been put there. The people have been paid. They've ducked. That's all under Panyaza Lesufi's watch. I mean, this is gross ineptitude and theft that's taking place. So he's inept. He shouldn't be in charge of this province.
And you know what, Wayne, we can invite the people that are watching this today to say, let's all get involved and let's do it this way. You know, you have the opportunity, if you're watching this and you agree with much of what's been said, to leave a comment or a suggestion, and I'll happily pass it on to Wayne, and they can evaluate it. And you never know, you may be sitting with an idea which nobody's really thought of. Put down your idea. We obviously know, yes, you can write the comment of saying, that there should be, leaders should go to prison. Well, we know that. But if you have a hard idea that is worth considering, put it down in the comments. I'll happily pass them on. We do read all the comments. We'll pass them on to Outa, and you never know, something might come of it. But it is time for the citizens to get involved.
They have to, got no option.
Right, and especially if you're watching this from Gauteng, where you're probably watching from a place that may or may not be suffering from load reduction, and then you're soon going to be driving on a potholed road through a traffic light that isn't working, on a road that isn't marked, with beggars at every street light in contravention of the municipal bylaws, traffic cops that are only there to do roadblocks to check your license and maybe get some lunch money. We all know the drill. We do it already. We all got one little pocket there in the car.
You shouldn't have. You must never do that.
Turning us into them. So
don't do that.
Let's do better, and let's get those suggestions going. Wayne, thank you so much for joining us today. It's great to hear from your side, and to everybody that's joined us, thank you so much for making the effort to come on to the State of the Nation. Remember, support Pace Car Rental, like and subscribe the State of the Nation channel, and we'll see you again.
Thanks a lot.